Welcome, everyone, to You Are the Cosmos global event, in which we call forth the deep wisdom of our unique abilities of the sacred self. In this time of great change, there is a strong movement toward reclaiming our power as masters of co creation with our Mother Earth to transform our world. I am your host, Amanda Kulbaba, and today I'm excited to present Dr. John Ryan. John Ryan, MD, is a professor of medicine and practitioner of energy and consciousness-based medicine. He is an author, Unity Field Healing, Volume 1, Foundations of Energy Medicine and Quantum Healing, and founder of Unity Field Healing, UFH, a new quantum process based on conscious activation of the DNA field to support healing and personal evolution. He channels the Syrian Blue White Collective, who support UFH and humanity's ascension through monthly transmissions and channeled messages. His topic for today is the 24th Chromosome, humanity's gateway to sacred understanding and power. Welcome, John. Thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you, Amanda. It's an absolute delight to be with you, and a big hello to the listening audience as well.
So my first question for you is, can you please tell us a little bit about your history and how you developed such a wonderful understanding of human consciousness and healing?
Sure, yeah. So going back in time, Amanda, I'll go back a few years now at this point. It was when I'm a medical doctor by training, so I've been practicing medicine. In fact, continue to practice medicine as a diagnostic imaging or radiology, CT, MRI, ultrasound. And I'm a professor at the university as well and teach trainees in medicine who are learning these skills. But as I was finishing medical school a number of years ago, I began to undergo what I would term today as spontaneous Kundalini awakening. At the time, of course, I didn't have that terminology. I just began to have these strange experiences and not quite sure what I was living back in, say, 1987, 88, around that time frame. And what would happen, Amanda, is as I would go to sleep at night, I would go into meditation, I began to have these experiences where my body would fill up with energy and surge with energy. And I began to pop out of my body and have these conscious out of body experiences. And so I was trained in grew up and was trained in a very Western model of understanding. So these kinds of things were very strange to me. In fact, I began to be a little worried, thinking something was actually wrong. But as time would unfold, I began to understand better the nature of what was happening. And so one thing led to another. I began to understand the energetic nature of the experience I was having. In fact, the spiritual nature of the experience that I was having. And it began to stir in me a curiosity to discover and learn lots of things about the energetic nature of consciousness and how human health and healing is interrelated to consciousness and energy in ways that we don't typically consider or understand in the Western model of thinking. And so with that, I began, of course, reading some books. There weren't a lot of books available back in the time. It was a different time than today when we have lots of wonderful information and access to the internet. And so I came across a couple of books that began to open doorways and lead me to an understanding and information about that. And so, of course, I learned all about the energy system, the chakras, different aspects of medicine, Eastern medicine, so Chinese medicine, various um, understandings of medicine that come from Hindu philosophy and, Ayurveda and ancient Indian teachings and these kinds of things. And it began to open my mind and, of course, enrich even further experiences that I was having. And I became very curious about working with the energy system to help in healing and to help people move through healing crises of different kinds. And so through the course of time, of course, I learned about Reiki and experienced other kinds of energy teaching and healing, and also teachers about the shifting nature of our understanding of, say, epigenetics and how our consciousness has an impact on our health, our well-being, our genetic expression, all these kinds of things. And then I began in around 2000 to have visions. And what would happen to me, Amanda, was a little peculiar. I would be in meditation or sometimes in an experience with a group at an event, if I was participating in an event, and I'd begin to see things through my mind's eye. And so, if if someone is listening, this might be a strange experience, but the simplest way to explain it is it's like having a dream, but you're conscious of what you're seeing in the dream. That's kind of what a vision is like. But if people have done shamanic, journeying and these types of things, they've probably had experiences that would help them understand, what I mean by that. And so the nature of the visions were they began to show me things and teach me things. And as time went on, I was introduced to this energy structure, which I later termed the 24th chromosome. And the way it presented itself to me was through a series of visions over time. There were bits and pieces of information that were added to this ongoing vision experience that were introducing me to this field or energy molecule that was connected to the spirit and to the person who is incarnate in the body, but it's also connected through an access of energy and consciousness to what we might term the soul or the higher self aspect of our own spiritual nature. And this energy is a creation, or it's something that the soul itself uses to incarnate into form when it's being born into a physical body. And this field, traditionally through time, has been very narrow. It's almost like we have a filament or a line, like a thread that was connecting our physical reality to our soul. But as we go through an energy process that's happening right now on the planet, our exposure or access, if you will, to that energy and information is expanding and changing in really profound ways. And so, without going into all the details of what that's all about, it's simple to say the communication with this 24th chromosome, or access to energy within this 24th chromosome, or ability to heal accessing information in this 24th chromosome is all expanding. And the reason it's expanding is because the earth is going through a consciousness shift. And so up to this point in time, it was very appropriate, if you will, that humans had limited access to this information while we were born, because we came through an incarnational cycle of what we would call karma. We would come, we would be born, we would have experiences, we would learn, we'd go back into spirit, and we'd come again, and we bring with us another, package or plan of the soul to kind of have a different kind of an incarnational experience. And we would come back and forth to the earth in this way through a reincarnational cycle. As we go forward at this point in time, there's a big shift that's happening at a very high level, if you will, of spiritual consciousness. So the earth is undergoing what you might call an ascension process. And in this process, the humanity is awakening into a much vaster and greater understanding of its own spiritual nature, as well as the earth herself is undergoing all kinds of energetic shifts and changes that are propelling humanity forward into a new cycle of evolution. And so we're on the threshold of that cycle, as we sit in this time frame. And as we move through these years, our memory is being triggered, our consciousness is being triggered to awaken and have a much greater understanding of this reality, and also how it can help us or serve us in healing and in consciousness evolution as a collective species, as well as an individual person. And so the earth herself is going through this big shift. Humanity is being catalyzed by this shift. And many people are beginning to have these spiritual awakening spirit experiences that are occurring by virtue of the energy connection we hold to the 24th chromosome. And so I can go into further detail, but I just kind of wanted to introduce that and lay it out as a first step.
No, that's great. Thank you. Lots of information there. And I was just thinking or wondering, and maybe other people are as well, as we were talking about the earth is going through her ascension and her healing, and so are we, and we're becoming to remember. Are there ways that maybe you could give people some support in this, because like a lot of people have had probably experiences like you have, but have ignored them or tried to say, oh, that was just my imagination, or you know push it to the side as more people are you know awakening and maybe becoming more enlightened or awakening to their 24th chromosome. what what would that maybe give us some things that we could like that could help support us or even understand that this is part of that process.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe I'll just take a step back and explain a little bit
Mm,
about the ascension so that we can understand the context, I guess, in which this is happening. When we look at the earth and humanity as a civilization, we can understand that we go through cycles of time and consciousness. Now, this is something that we don't think about every day, but time cycles are a very everyday present concept. Like, for example, we can take a year and break it up into 12 months. We could break it up into 52 weeks. We could break it up into however many hours that would add up to, even seconds if we want to get really small. And all of these time fractions are occurring simultaneously. And if we would imagine, for example, it's December 31st on a Saturday evening in 1989, and the clock is about to strike 12. When the clock hits midnight, it will represent the ending of a year, 12 months, 365 days, and they'll all be ending at the very same point in time. On a much bigger scale, way outside the scale in which humanity normally thinks or frames time, there are big cycles of energy and consciousness that are governed by the movement of the galaxy, the whole solar system within the galaxy. And so there are cycles that are created by the solar system and the sun's relationship to the center of the galaxy, or what we would call the galactic equator. And so this is wavering up and down in a big cycle over numbers of years. And the Earth precesses, it's called, through various points of energy within the galactic sky. And so we're familiar with this, actually, even if we're not thinking or completely exposed to this kind of information, but we're aware of things like the astrological zodiac signs. And what they actually represent are the 12 constellations that mark the periphery of this circle. And as the Earth turns, we rotate through these ages one by one. So we could have the age of Aquarius, for example, which we're moving into. But when we go bigger than the single cycles through the various single constellations and we put it in a full circle, it takes 26,000 years for the Earth to precess through that time space. And so every 26,000 years is the ending of one of these massive big cycles. And they represent, in galactic terms and consciousness terms, really big cycles of time, which fits into a more Eastern understanding of time cycles that were referred to as yugas, these big time frames that where the Earth is precessing through an energy that will kind of govern the nature of energy supporting that civilization. And the Mayans were very aware of this. They were phenomenal timekeepers, and they defined December 21st, 2012 as an endpoint of one of these cycles. And so we all heard about the end times and what that represented. And so as we journey through that moment in time, it isn't the end of time, it's the end of a cycle of time. And that was kind of a misunderstanding that a lot of people were holding around that moment. But it's the beginning of a new time cycle. And it's the beginning of a cycle that's so big, it really marks a very different kind of human civilization. And it's so different that we don't even really know in fullness what that means or what it looks like as we go forward in time. So we've kind of crossed the threshold of something that will take us thousands of years to live out as a collective humanity. But as we go into this new time frame, we're building a different kind of a civilization and a different kind of a world. And so sages, voyants who had access to, spiritual information, things from eons ago, explain that if humanity makes it to this point in time and consciousness, it would begin earmark the beginning of what we would call an ascended civilization. And by ascended, what it means is an understanding of, in a greater way, of the true nature of reality, our true nature as human beings who carry a soul or a divinity within us, and the understanding of the unity that exists at a higher plane of consciousness than humanity lives in the third dimension. So, for example, in our world, we're all very isolated. We all have our personalities. We all have our ways of being. We have our cultures, our colors, our societies, our genders, all these things, which can serve as division points. People can fail to understand the connectedness we hold with each other because of that perceived separation. But in a higher field of energy and consciousness, humanity operates as a collective whole. In fact, we're one being if we think in those terms. And so you hear people speak of unity consciousness and these kinds of things. And this is what they're touching into when they say things like that. And so in this civilization, the good of the whole becomes the paramount value. In other words, something that served you but didn't serve me, or served me but didn't serve you, would not be supported the same way energetically in the new as it would have been in the old. And so humanity is going through this unbelievable metamorphosis that will take time. It'll take generations, in fact, to live out more fully. But we're going into this time where there's an incredible shift in the foundational human consciousness, the way humans will understand the nature of reality and understand themselves to be. And so, as we move into that energy, a lot of the old systems of reality have to break down. Okay, because if they can be supported in an older duality energy, but they're not going to be supported in new unity consciousness energy. And it's easy for us to begin identifying some of those things. So, for example, systems of business that might operate on a corrupt foundation or a corrupt framework can't really make it through the needle, the nexus of that transition. They'll have to either be removed or transformed. And so, what we'll see happening in society and politics in our lives is all kinds of things that might be out of alignment with where humanity is moving will be called to task. They're going to come up for evaluation. They're going to be called for corrections. They're going to be called, or they're going to be simply removed altogether. And so, what that creates is a period of time that's very chaotic when you understand it in its fuller picture, because everything we understand to be the foundational nature of our world is going to be encountered and transformed. The way we relate to the planet, the way we pollute the planet, the way that we pollute our lives, the way we pollute our bodies, the way that we interact with each other in a less than, respectful consciousness way, the struggle between genders, suppression of female energy, all the kinds of things that we see on the screen of life, they're all going to be brought up to the surface for reconciliation or healing. And so we see this. If you just take a step back and you watch the news and you watch social events, you can see all of this happening now on the screen of life. And because of that, it creates a lot of turbulence. And the turbulence can be very difficult because people who don't understand the nature of what's happening can be very threatened and afraid of the experience. So that's the first thing to understand that's important. It's really of great value for people to begin to understand what's happening energetically and in consciousness, so they can understand the nature of what's happening in the very real physical world and not be so threatened by it or alarmed by it or afraid of it or trying to stop it. The other thing that begins to happen is people begin having internal experiences. People will begin to understand the nature of energy. They'll start to feel energy in their body. They may have experiences where they see energy. They may have intuitions or precognition. They might have clairvoyant abilities that begin to develop, all of which are part of us in a more multidimensional way as the 24th chromosome expands. But if you don't know what's happening and you've not ever been introduced to those kinds of concepts, when they first begin to happen, they can be threatening and alarming and confusing and all kinds of other things. I know very well all of that stuff. I'm sure you do too. And so as you go through those experiences, of course, they create their own challenges that you have to work through and figure out, I guess, in your own way. What you begin to understand is they're all, those things happen because our own soul, our own higher self has said it's time. It's time for you to awaken a little bit. It's time for you to be stirred. It's time for you to take on the integration that you were born to do or you were meant to do. And when it's happening, it's really a blessing. It's really a noble gift. It's really something that's incredible, but it doesn't always feel that. And so, the most important thing for people to understand as they live those kinds of things is to reach out, to share with people who've had similar experiences, to find a network of support or collective consciousness where people can won't always have all the answers, but they will be non-judgmental. They'll be able to understand that what you're living is understandable. It's something that is can be understood from the process of the ascension and from the process of how things work in spirit and consciousness. And so that's probably the most important thing for people to do. It's not something you can always figure out on your own. But at the second point is it's also a time to be with yourself and to spend time contemplating and being inside and tuning into your thoughts and feelings that are occurring because they're also a force of guidance and support that will kind of give you the information or the inspiration, if you will, to kind of keep on your path. What begins to happen for most people are two things. You begin to have really powerful intuitions. You start to feel like you're drawn to something, or you simply have to participate in something, or you open up your computer and something is advertised that you just from your heart space feel this huge connection to. And that kind of intuition begins to be the guiding process that is meant to drive your reality or your life. And the other thing that will happen are synchronicities, things that expose you to people, to energy, to information, to events, to teachings that you didn't even know existed. And you had no way of knowing that would be of service or value to you in your own evolution, but they kind of show up in some way or another, as well as maybe friendships or encounters with people who are able to support you or assist you in some way on your path. And so all these things kind of begin to happen in a, I guess, a magical way, for lack of a better word. And then they become a great force of guidance and support. So people listen to those intuitions and follow through with those synchronicities and reach out to have a community around them to support. They'll have everything they need to walk through those kinds of awakenings with ease and, well, relative ease and grace.
Well, that's perfect. Thank you. It's very true. We're all needing right now that support, and we're all everybody, even if they don't aren't quite conscious of it yet, we are all, every single one of us on this planet is having something. We're having those memories, that have been repressed for so long starting to come back up. And I want to go back to the 24th chromosome and the unity field healing that you do. Can you talk more on this and um, what what this means? Go a little bit deeper for us.
Yeah, sure. So the simple way to understand the 24th chromosome is it's like this quantum field of energy and information. When I see it in my mind's eye, it looks like a big helix of DNA. It's how it's structured. And it's a field of energy and information that the simplest way to understand it is when you're being born, when your soul decides it's going to be born, and your spirit is coming down to the earth, this field of energy and information comes and merges with the life you have chosen for that incarnation. And the way that I was shown this in the vision was it forms like an octahedron crystal of energy and information that comes and merges with the physical body of a chosen fetus, a baby that's developing in its mother's womb. And this energy kind of binds together with the physical body and the spiritual information. They kind of merge to become one unit. And that becomes the governing energy or the soul's energy that's present with each one of us as we live our lives. And we all do the same thing. This is the process, how we come here and how we show up. This field of energy has connection, not just to this lifetime. This lifetime is one part of that greater field of the energy and information in that chromosome. But as a soul, we live many lifetimes. And so if we were to pass and go back into spirit and come again into another physical body at another point in time, the energy and information would be there, but it would be connected to that new body or that new experience. And so this field of energy and information is not limited to a single incarnation. It actually has like a library, an Akashic library of every incarnation that a soul has lived. In fact, it has access to even more than that, more quantum or galactic information and so on. And it has a very direct connection, what we could term the higher self. The soul is kind of like the part of us that comes into form to have experiences. But at another level of being, we are a consciousness itself that doesn't incarnate in form. We can call that the higher self or the I am presence. And so that part of us is governing, or it's like an overlighting spiritual consciousness that is behind the scenes, if you will, of the whole process of incarnation. And so as this chromosome becomes more active, because of the energy changes that are happening on the planet through this time cycle, people start to have access to information in that field. Now, the way that shows up in really practical terms is people begin to have a shifting interest. They might have been very, interested in, I don't know, knitting and crocheting, and they lose complete interest in it, but they develop a passion for gardening. And then they might lose interest in that and develop a passion in learning about healing and so on and so forth. And so there'll be a shift in the background of what a person is living without seeing big, stops and starts. Is kind of a natural process, but a person has a shift in their consciousness. They begin to become interested in different things. They may recognize they have fears or phobias of different things that kind of surface or become more prevalent in their consciousness as they move through time and not understand why. And so what happens is as this energy expands, this 24th chromosome field expands, it's like in this body and in this mind and in this consciousness, we start to have access to more energy and information. And so people may remember past lives they lived. They may have an experience where in a dream they see themselves living in another incarnation, or they may do a past life regression and see another lifetime that is very real to them. And it will help them understand why something is so in their life. So, for example, I've worked with people who were very afraid of water. And when they do a past life kind of an encounter or memory, they may see a life where they were on a boat and drowned, or, were in a lake and drowned. And so the memory, that energy, the memory of that experience makes them a little trepidatious. They may approach water and they realize the power and the possibility of kind of, drowning and what have you. And so the subconscious memory of that may influence our perception or our understanding of something in this life or in this reality. Now, everybody has had many prior incarnations. And the people who kind of go through this stuff right now on the planet are typically people who've had many incarnations. Sometimes we use the term old souls, people who've been around the block a number of times. And so they've had lots of incarnations through time. And when this energy starts to open, there can be a bleed in from many little different things from all these past lives and memories. And at the beginning, it feels like a healing process more than anything, because what tends to surface are powerful energies, powerful emotions, powerful historical memories of things that we've lived. And one thing, for example, I often bring this up in a healing context or when I'm speaking to healers, is anybody who's drawn to healing of this kind, energy healing, consciousness healing, Reiki healing, et cetera, has certainly lived other lifetimes in healing environments. They've worked with nature, they've worked with energies, they've worked with crystals, they've worked with herbs, all kinds of different things. And many of those lifetimes ended tragically for one reason or another, because what happened to healers in the past? People would become afraid of them because they didn't understand what they were doing. And so we would use witches, turn witches and all these kinds of things. So people would be killed and, kind of knocked out, if you will, because of the fear people began to perceive them with. And so when you as a soul begin to awaken and your Akash is kind of opening up to some of these gifts and memories and abilities, you might think every cell and every atom inside you might be screaming, no, don't go there. It doesn't end well. And so there might be a protective sense of energy or resistance to wanting to move forward. Yet at the same time, this is a very different time. And in a big picture, all of those experiences were really a preparation for this time, even if we didn't live very long in that lifetime. They were all to kind of keep this memory and energy alive in the human record so that when the time came for people to wake up, we'd have access to it again. And so the ascension marks that or represents that kind of transition. And so a lot of people with an Akash or a spiritual memory or a reincarnational memory of healing and all kinds of other things are being stirred awake right now. All of them, we all are, because it's a time when we're going to begin bringing this energy and information and understanding alive to help move the planet forward into the energy of what's coming and what's new. And so there's a lot of grace comes with this transition. There's a tremendous energy of spiritual grace that comes and healing, and people are being awakened so that they can, first of all, have their own awakening experience, but then secondly, play a role in helping other people move through that kind of a awakening and transitioning process as well. And so together we're our brothers and sisters keepers. We all, in a unity consciousness understanding, we all work together. And so humanity is supporting itself to move through the nexus of this transition. And so the healers that are being called awake will certainly play a profound role and an ever expanding role as we move forward into the energy of what's new. So a long answer, but I hope it gets to the foundation. Unity field healing is a part of that support. So the way this came to me, Amanda, was, as I mentioned, through these visions I've had. If people are go to my website, there's articles and things that talk about unity field healing, and it shows pictures of some of the visions. I tried to artistically reproduce some of them so people can more easily grasp the nature of some of these things. But what I was basically shown was within this field of energy, this chromosomal energy, the 24th chromosome, as people expand in this energy, they go through experiences where things can be surfaced to heal. And so a lot of people began having 3D kinds of experiences that require healing attention. And so a lot of people who begin awakening notice this. They develop food sensitivities, they develop energetic sensitivities, they develop fatigue, they develop rashes, they develop all kinds of things that are part of the energy awakening that happens through the body. And the body that we're in was not originally designed in fullness to carry these higher spiritual energies. It was a body that was designed to be very 3D. And so the energy supports the body undergoing a kind of metamorphosis that allows us to gently and progressively over time integrate the capacity to hold this energy and have this energy. And so as people go through that, it's very helpful to have healing modalities and things that support the release of things that are letting go and the integration of things that are coming in. And so unity field healing kind of steps onto the scene in that paradigm. And what I was shown basically in simple terms was a template of light that works within the 24th chromosomal space in the sessions that are done as part of unity field healing to help people recalibrate this energy space, this quantum space of energy. And so the program is set up in such a way that people undergo a series of sessions. There are 3 sessions. And the first is an attunement. It's really like an energy healing session whose sole purpose is to really activate and catalyze the 24th chromosomal energy. The second session is an attunement to a light template, a pattern of light that is capable of working within this space that allows it to move and shift energy within the space to help people recalibrate the energy connection to the 24th chromosome. And then the third session is when we begin bringing in intentional reasons for doing the session. So the first two sessions are kind of like an attunement process. We get all geared up. The 24th chromosome is catalyzed. We're attuned to the template. And then we can begin bringing in intentions. So, for example, someone might have the intention to help heal the anxiety that they're feeling at this moment in time. And what will happen through the session is the energy will work within the person to help them get to the access point of what's creating that anxiety. And so, what's so difficult for us in the transitional period that we're all living through is that sometimes these symptoms that come up, we don't have a conscious reason for them. We don't, like we'll say, I feel very anxious, but I don't know why. And we can't relate it to anything we feel on the earth. We can't relate it to anything in our personal history. And we're not even sure why we're feeling it in the first place. And we don't always have access to a memory of an incarnation that explains it and so on. Yet the solution or the healing for it lies within the 24th chromosome. And so the energy can work almost in a magical way or way of grace to help get to the root, if you will, of the energy and to recalibrate it or release it so that the person can begin to feel a healing around that energy or that complication. And so the work can be used to help people heal in all kinds of ways, physically, emotionally, mentally, on different levels, but also to evolve and integrate, to move forward into the energy of what's coming for us or what we are growing into as an individual person. So, for example, I'll sometimes have people who do sessions. They're becoming a healer and they want to do public speaking, but they're petrified of doing it. And they might do a session to support them in becoming comfortable as a speaker or become comfortable in the space of holding that energy. And so, in that sense, it's not so much just a healing, it's more of a development. It's like personal development or consciousness development. And so you can kind of see how there's two sides to the same equation, but the sessions can be used in that way. And so it came to me through visions that I had to kind of decode and then turned into sessions. And then I began to do the sessions and ultimately teach the sessions. So since 2016, I've been initiating practitioners in the work, and there's now about 500 practitioners all around the planet. So pretty much on every continent except Antarctica, I think, at this point. We'll have to train a penguin. And yeah, so people are all over the planet doing this work and having incredible experiences with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I wanted to ask you, what is the connection with this work and I think it's Sirius that you work with, or it's in your bio that I read. Let me go back up here.
The Syrian Blue White Collective.
Syrian, yeah, sorry, Syrian Blue White Collective. Yes. Can you talk? Sorry, I was trying to do it for my memory and that doesn't work.
It's a long one. A lot of words.
Doesn't
We
work.
say the SBWC. I always abbreviate it because
Yes. Yeah.
or the Syrian.
Can
So
you talk to us about that? Yeah.
of course, yeah. So it's kind of funny because as I went through my own personal evolution, Amanda, you can imagine I'm in I grew up in a medical environment. I'm a physician, very scientific in my background and approach to things generally. And as I was having these experiences, every time I would live something that was pushing me one step forward, I had to go through my own integration. And so as I started to understand the reality of energy and being able to work with energy to help people in their healing and all this kind of stuff, each step along the way, I had to process that, integrate it, overcome my own resistance or judgment or whatever, and kind of, find footing in the new. And the unity field work kind of was a big step because you're starting to work with mystical things. It's like a mystical energy that you're not seeing. You feel very readily as a practitioner when you're working with it, but to someone who's unfamiliar with it, it sounds like a bunch of words. Like, is it even real? Does that even happen? And so you kind of had to go through that process of getting comfortable with working with invisible energy and all the things that go along with it, the judgments that can come back on you because of that, and so forth. And so I was very happily integrated at the level of the unity field healing work and teaching it to practitioners when all of a sudden, in one of my meditations, this group of light beings came to me and they presented themselves as the Syrian Blue White Collective. And the way it happened was they kind of descended as a ball of light, and then the light kind of opened up into a field. And it was like they stepped out of the field of energy as these luminous beings of light. And there was a whole array of them standing, and they introduced themselves like through telepathy, like through mental language, and said that they were the Syrian Blue White Collective. And they explained that they've been part of the unity field healing work. And as a group, they are a group of light beings who live at this moment in an ascended civilization. So on the star system Sirius. And they've been a very intimate part of humanity's development on the planet. They're very closely connected in a spiritual way with humanity and with overlighting humanity. They've been present many times during the cycles of time on the planet, in ancient Egypt and going back to Atlantis and Lemuria and other times on the planet that we've almost forgotten. And they are coming back at this point in time in a more conscious way to support humanity as we move through this transition, which I guess makes sense if you think about it in that context. And they said that they've been kind of behind the scenes supporting the evolution of unity field healing, and my memories, the recollections, the visions, all these kinds of things. But they wanted to begin a series of transmissions. And what they explained was there's a group of light beings who've been working intently, who've been opening up to energy and consciousness. They're kind of well established in that process, and they're ready to take on kind of the mantle of new energies that are coming into the planet beginning around the year 2019, 2020 in a much more powerful way. And humans are slowly taking on the ability to integrate what they term the diamond light body. And so they wanted to begin a series of transmissions every month where we do a group gathering. And so these are done on probably usually the third Thursday of every month. They're called the Syrian Blue White Collective Transmissions. And so there's a meeting where we do a teaching around a topic. We do work together in energy, and then there's a meditation transmission at the end where we do a healing process together that's guided by this group of light beings and supported by them. And the meditations are kind of anchor points for instilling energies and helping us evolve or move through the energies that we're integrating now. And so in order to do the transmissions, it was time for them to make themselves known. So before that, they were there. I just wasn't aware of them. But then, of course, I had to go through my own process of integrating this. And you can imagine I was used to people in a more scientific environment thinking I was a little different or a little unusual. But when you start channeling light beings and working with star beings and this kind of stuff, of course you've completely stepped over the edge and you're officially crazy. But it's the nature of what happened. And so you just have to find your personally I had to find my comfort with it and begin to do it. But in the end they were so supportive, and they were so clear in their expression and communication that I was not at all uncomfortable, I guess, taking on the mantle of that process. And so they continue to work with us to this point in time, and they channel a lot of information about the integration of the crystalline axis and how, as we expand our energy and our crystalline nature, and the Earth's crystalline grid, a structure aspect of the Earth's energy, is expanding, our communication, our connection to that grid is expanding. And so it's becoming easier or more powerful to work with these evolving energies to help move the planet forward in different ways. So they share a lot of information about those kinds of things. And the way I do the transmissions, Amanda, is they're 3-hour evenings. So there's a teaching, a whole process. We take a break, and the last 45 minutes or so is the meditation. I chop out the meditation and I post those all freely on YouTube, and people can access the whole library of prior meditations. And so people, if they go to my YouTube site, which just search for John Ryan or Unity Field Healing on YouTube, they'll see the whole playlist for all of these meditations, and they're there. And they're meditations specific for healing ancestral karma, energies held in the Akashic patterns of the past, being able to integrate energies of the evolving diamond light body, so on and so forth. So there's a whole listing. There's more than 60 meditations there at this point for people. And so they're there. And of course, people can also purchase the replays for the entire sessions as well. So they're available on the website too, if people want to do that. And but there's a lot of healing. People have had incredible experiences working with the Syrian beings in these meditations, really profound healings and awakenings. And so I can see them as really ambassadors of spiritual support. They're kind of incredible and powerful, I guess, in the way that they're helping humanity at this time. So this is all kind of like a progression of energy and consciousness. And so that's the role they play and how they work.
That's great. Thank you. And that's lovely about knowing about the meditations that people can go to them and access them and start working on their own healing if they feel drawn to this. So that's great. Thank you. And I
And I'd
think too, like,
so I was just going to say
sorry.
too, if people are doing that, Amanda, I'd encourage them. The meditations came in a certain order, but you don't have to follow them in the order in which they've come. Sometimes people will look at the list and there's one of them that really pops out in an intuitive way. This, I really want to use this meditation. And I'd encourage people to do that, to rely on that intuitive sense of guidance and to do it. You can go back and do them all in sequence if you want, but if one of them or two of them, or if one after the other kind of speaks to you as the meditation, then do them in that order because your soul is kind of guiding that process, and that would be a very appropriate thing to do.
Okay. Yes, perfect. Thank you for that. That's important. I wanted to ask, just because, this, we started sort of this talk a little bit there, is do you think with this whole process, and the unity field healing, working with the galactic energies and that this is going to change how we incarnate on the planet? Is it going to change if we are going to, like, if some of us souls will still continue to incarnate on this planet? What do you think? Do you have thoughts on that?
Oh, wow. Yeah, what a wonderful question. So yeah, for the answer is yes, it will change. And the way it will change is manifold, but in simple terms, what will begin to happen is as we're born and reborn on the planet, we will come in with a much more open spiritual memory. And we're starting to see this now. We talk about the crystal kids, the indigo kids, the various kids of different vibrations or what have you. And so we'll see a lot of children who are born who are quite different than humans of a generation ago or two generations ago. I always say to people, it's not hard to convince any parent or grandparent that human nature is changing because they see it in the children. They see these kids are born, they're kind of wired up to work with technology, they're wired up to work with group consciousness. They're very comfortable with online platforms. They work in a group consciousness already, etc. But they will also, we will all, that not they, we too, when we come back, will also be born in this open space of memory. And we see lots of children today who have Akashic memories. The YouTube is full of videos of kids who are telling their parents about lifetimes they've had, this kind of stuff, to the level that many of them are provable. They'll have memories of being killed in World War II or something that is recorded in history, but also in a time frame when it can be proven from recorded facts. And so we'll see kids who were born, they knew their name, their spouse, their neighbors, these kinds of things, and they'll have all that information. And when you go back, the parents will be often a little alarmed by all of this, but then they may go back and do an investigation and realize everything they've said is true. And they will find the person who they were in the prior lifetime. And so, it's just another example of the kinds of things that unfold as the nature of this all changes. When we're born in the future, we won't be limited so much to a specific karmic focus, which has kind of been the historical energy. We were born kind of through the wheel of karma, taking on the mantle of healing aspects of karma and developing other skills and abilities from one incarnation to the next. The shift of energy into the new will change that karmic nature. Humans will, by nature, become much more self aware and responsible. That you'll understand that we create through energy and that all of our stories have a relationship to how we posture our own consciousness and our own frame of thinking and believing, and that everything we've lived in the past was by design on purpose for us to have certain kinds of experiences that don't necessarily serve us in the same way going forward in time. And to put that in a really simple terms, I often say to people, do you need another experience to know it's not right to steal from your neighbor? Like, do you really need that experience at this point in your incarnational life? And the answer, of course, is going to be no for anybody who's lived a lot. And you realize there's been a refinement of consciousness that's already taken place. And so there's less and less value almost in approaching things from the karmic cycle. In fact, we end up getting ourselves in more trouble than we solve. So it's probably better that that wheel stop at some point. As we go forward, we'll have an access to a vast array of memory and consciousness from other lifetimes and other spiritual dimensions. And so we're going to be born with a much greater sense of purpose and focus, a much greater ability to self-heal and to create, restore balance and harmony within our body to keep ourselves healthy and well. We're going to understand the greater nature of reality and the value of working for the benefit of others as well as for ourselves. And all of this will be second nature. And so there'll be a tremendous shift in the paradigm of humanity because of the access we have to these things. People are not necessarily going to walk around remembering past lives left, right, and center, but they'll be able to access the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience that came from that lifetime. It'll be an integrated part of our consciousness. So it's almost like we'll be living in a multi-dimensional space where we are all these things simultaneously. We have memory or access to the memory and the teachings of all those times simultaneously in the same body. And so you can imagine the potential, how human potential will shift and change as we do that and we have that access, if you will. And so through the next generation or two, we're going to see a lot of stops and starts. There'll be a lot of chaotic energy as we break through old patterns and all that kind of stuff. But there will be this merciful installation of a new foundation that will guide humanity forward and begin to create a framework and a platform for humanity to live in what we might call an ascended space, a higher consciousness space. And so, we just knowing that and just understanding that, I've always found medicinal. I find because I know that and understand it from my firsthand experiences, I don't fear the future and I'm not afraid of what's happening in the present the way I would have been if I didn't have that understanding, the same understanding. And so, when you find comfort in that and you learn how to create solace within your being and how to create that sacred space within your being to have that kind of restoration, then that moves you forward in the energy. This is a time where it's almost like there are bridge people. There are people who've lived in the old and they're growing into the new while undergoing the transformation. And so we can think of this in many ways or metaphors, but it's almost like a bridge of consciousness from the old to the new. As we settle in the new, the old will fall away eventually. And as that happens, the energy of the new will really take on form. And you hear a lot of people, they say, when you start talking about reincarnation and stuff, they'll say, I'm not coming back. I am done. But I'll always tease them. I'll say, you would be crazy not to come back. Because as we go forward, things are going to become so exciting and so magnificent that we'll all come back. Once we're on the other side and we kind of understand that, remember that, we would never not come back because we've been part of everything that's gotten us to this point. So there's no way we're going to back out at the last moment when things are just about to get good, right? So a lot of
Exactly.
amazing things. Yeah.
No, as I'm listening to you speak, I'm getting so excited. I'm like, yes. And it's almost like a relief within myself of like, oh, finally, finally we get to the good stuff and get
Exactly.
out of that, yeah, karmic cycle. And I agree with you too. A couple of things that you said. One especially is there's a lot of people, people I know, clients who are really quite angry right now. And I'm like, why are you so angry? It's perfect how everything is going. We have to go through this. We have to trust in the process and know that when we come out the other side, that's exactly where it's going to be perfect. That's where we're meant to be. So yeah, completely understand. And then the other part is too, like, especially you know growing up with a lot of light workers around me, one of the things that I've heard the most is like, this is my last life, I'm never coming back again, I'm never coming back to this world. And you're right, like, why not? Like, if we did so much work, like we did a lot of hard work up until this point, like, why not come back when you made it like a paradise? Taking the rewards.
Exactly. It's so hard to always conceptualize that through human experience. It's the same. Like if somebody loses somebody dear to them and they're in a space of grief, you can comfort them, but you still need to allow the space for that to unfold and for the person to make their reconciliation and adapt to a new reality. And so, what we're living through collectively in some ways is like that. And people will experience that period of grief in different ways. And so, if we just kind of sometimes you can't say anything. Sometimes you just have to let someone process it with their emotions and with what they're living. But eventually, on the other side, things will get brighter again and they will transform. But it seems right now on the earth, so much is happening so fast and from so many directions. It's overwhelming. It's like, from natural disasters to wars to political crises to all the kinds of things, that are happening every day. You turn on the news and it's just a bombardment of all these things. It's really overwhelming to the psyche. And so if you don't have your own anchor, your own foundation, your own inner space, your own consciousness point to kind of go back and still yourself and realize in the big picture the nature of what's happening, it's pretty easy to get lost and out of balance. And so it's really incredibly valuable to teach people the tools they need, the abilities to meditate, to center the things that you're doing yourself, Amanda, in your teachings, to help people get back to that place and then hold that space. And what you start understanding too is so much of what we're doing in energy and healing isn't about the practice of the healing that people may even be engaged in. Sometimes it's just holding that vibration. There's nothing more service and value to the planet than a human being who integrates and can hold peace in a space and an environment that supports the collective good, the collective whole. And so as light workers do their work, as they learn to heal, they learn to let go of historical energies and wounds and all these kinds of things, we become anchor points or stability points for holding that energy in place so the new can come into being. And so a lot of the service of a transitional light worker, a bridge light worker, is undergoing the metamorphosis themselves to become an anchor point for helping others as well. So and I throw that in because I see a lot of times light workers get into the struggle of thinking, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? And there is no more important doing than what I've just said. Above and beyond, everything after that is just icing on the cake. If you help people in healing, if you sit and talk to people who are undergoing crises, if you do all these things that healers do, then of course you're adding icing to the cake. But the most foundational thing that anybody can do is to learn to be that themselves, to live in that healed space. And so I encourage from my heart everybody to realize that and to take it seriously.
Thank you. That was beautiful. This has been a lovely discussion today. And yeah, just thank you for opening up your heart to everybody and allowing us in and seeing all these wonderful gifts that are there. So we are running out of time. This has been so fascinating, but we do have to end. Before we go, though, I just wanted to mention to everybody John's free gift. He does have a free gift, a free offering. It is three people will be selected in a contest draw of entrants to win the full 3 audio package of Unity Field Healing. So please take advantage of this. You can find the link to this underneath the link to John's interview. So check that out. And I know you've already mentioned this, but if you could just let everybody know one more time where we could find you online, and if there's any last little things you'd like us to know before you go.
Sure. So everything related to Unity Field Healing or Syrian transmissions, everything I do basically is all under a website called unityfieldhealing.com. So just the words spelled together, unityfieldhealing.com. No dashes or spaces, right? And so if people search that or search my name online, they'll find access to Unity Field Healing. All of the events and things that I do are always under the events tab on the page. Links to the transmissions if people want to attend, the transmissions are there. And I have a very special event coming up in September when I'm going to be working with Lee Carroll, the channel for Cryon. Many people probably know Lee. We're doing a joint channeling weekend intensive in Rochester, New York on September 21st. So that's listed on the website. A beautiful opportunity to, receive the incredible wisdom that flows through Lee and Cryon, and to receive channel messages and healing with the Syrians as well. So that's a very exciting one coming up. But everything is there. It's always kept up to date, and that's the easiest way for people to access.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you once more for this beautiful discussion. It was great. And I just want to I want to thank all our viewers and listeners. Thank you for being with us today. I hope you all have a beautiful day. So much love, and I will see you all soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amanda, and for the beautiful service of the event to
Oh,
humanity, and a very special thank you for all the listeners as well. Blessings
yeah.
to everyone.
Thank you.